India has fired missiles at several targets inside Pakistan. They're the most significant strikes there in more than 50 years. And after 20 years of delays, real ID enforcement begins today at airports across the United States. Good morning. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. India has fired missiles at several targets in Pakistan. They're the most significant strikes in more than 50 years. India is blaming Pakistan for a militant attack last month that killed 26 Indian tourists. They were in the Indian-controlled part of Kashmir province. Pakistan denies responsibility. NPR's Dia Hadid says India is claiming its military response is appropriate.
India's army says it struck militant training camps and what they call terror infrastructure. And many of those strikes were in Pakistani-held Kashmir. Kashmir is that Himalayan territory divided between India and Pakistan. It's claimed by both, and it's at the heart of nearly every conflict between the two countries. But Pakistan says the strikes mostly hit mosques and part of a hydropower dam.
NPR's Dia Hadid reporting Pakistan claims it shot down Indian warplanes, but that has not been confirmed. Roman Catholic cardinals have held a final mass at St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. They're starting their conclave to choose a new pope. NPR's Ruth Sherlock reports the morning mass is the final public act before the cardinals are locked inside the Sistine Chapel to cast their vote for a new pontiff.
The cardinals in blood-red robes processed up the aisle of the crowded St. Peter's Basilica, passing the bishops in their deep purple gowns and stopping briefly at the altar to pray. White smoke from the burning frankincense curled up towards the golden cupola, the air filled with the music from the choir as they led the congregation in prayerful song. We are here to invoke the help of the Holy Spirit, said Cardinal Battista Re in his homily, so that the Pope elected may be he whom the Church and humanity need at this difficult and complex turning point in history. Ruth Sherlock, NPR News, St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City.
The U.S. Supreme Court is allowing a Trump administration ban on transgender military service members to take effect for now. The justices blocked a lower court order that had halted the ban. Trump implemented this in his first term in office, but the order was reversed by former President Joe Biden. Trump signed a new order shortly after taking office the second time. Today's the day the Transportation Security Administration starts asking passengers to show a real ID. NPR's Martin Costi reports these are the picture IDs that meet federal standards set by Congress 20 years ago.
From now on, the only state IDs valid for air travel are those marked with a star or a U.S. flag, indicating tougher vetting of a person's ID. It also means the person is in the country legally. Brian Zimmer is a former congressional researcher who wrote the Real ID law, which allows states to also issue plain driver's licenses to people who don't have legal immigration status.
It's legal federally to do that, but it's not legal for someone bearing one of those IDs to fly on an airplane. And that's the big deal of the deadline.
19 states issue these plain IDs, but last month the Trump administration sent a letter criticizing states that have, quote, issued driver's licenses to individuals present in the United States in violation of federal immigration law. Martin Costi, NPR News.
Another federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from using the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador. Colorado Public Radio's Allison Sherry has more.
In her ruling, Judge Charlotte Sweeney took aim at the federal government's argument that it shouldn't be subject to judicial review. She says, quote, that sentence staggers, and that federal courts are a, quote, feature, not a defect of the nation's constitution. The 100 or so men covered by this ruling in Denver are detained at a facility in Aurora, and the judge notes this in no way prevents the government from putting them into deportation proceedings. They just must have due process. For NPR News, I'm Allison Sherry in Denver.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will meet Chinese economic officials this weekend in Switzerland. Bessent says they'll likely talk about de-escalating the tariffs between the two nations. President Trump's trade war is taking a toll on cargo traffic across the Pacific Ocean. As NPR's Scott Horsley reports, a significant number of the ships that were supposed to dock this month at the Port of Los Angeles have been canceled.
Rather than pay tariffs of 145%, many importers have put shipments from China on hold. The number of import containers passing through the Port of L.A. this week is down about 35% from a year ago. While businesses tried to stockpile goods before the tariffs took effect, the port's executive director, Gene Soroka, expects those inventories will start to run out in 4 to 6 weeks.
So if you go to the store and you're looking for a blue shirt, you may see a bunch of purple ones. You may not see that blue one in your size or style, and probably it will be more expensive than it was previously.
Soroka says the trade war is also hurting exports, with fruit, nut, and wine growers in California's Central Valley reporting a steep drop in overseas sales. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Trump administration has stripped the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS of millions of dollars for educational programming for children. NPR's David Folkenflik reports the Ready to Learn program has helped fund shows such as Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow.
The Education Department informed CPB of its decision to terminate the program on Friday, hours after President Trump said he'd bar any federal money from going to NPR or PBS. CPB and PBS and NPR say he doesn't have the power to do that. The Education Department says the grants were funding, quote, divisive ideologies and woke propaganda. The CPB and PBS have won these rolling 5-year education grants since they were first offered 30 years ago. According to the CPB, the content funded by the program in the current fiscal year generated more than 1.8 billion video streams and 10 million television viewers. CPB Chair Patricia Harrison says she'll work with lawmakers and with the Trump administration to rebuild support for the program. David Folkenflik, NPR News.
Elon Musk's company SpaceX may soon launch more gigantic rockets from its base in South Texas. NPR's Jeff Brumfield reports the company has now been given a significant environmental approval by the Federal Aviation Administration.
SpaceX is developing a massive rocket in Texas. It's called Starship. It's the largest spacecraft ever built, and Musk hopes it will someday carry people to Mars. But before it can, the company needs to complete a lot of test launches. It had been limited to just 5 launches a year, but a new ruling from the FAA would allow that number to jump to 25 launches. Local environmental groups have been concerned about the impact those extra launches would have on surrounding wetlands, but the FAA concluded they would not cause significant harm. The additional launches won't be coming soon. Starship exploded during its last 2 test flights, scattering debris across the Caribbean. SpaceX is still working to fix the root cause of those failures. Jeff Brumfield, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News.